Hello and welcome to the Miraculous Being series. I'm your host and self awareness coach, and this is yet another episode where we discover, learn, and implement lessons from others' life journeys. Others who I believe epitomize Miraculous in its truest spirit, who live life to the fullest, who worked hard on themselves to be where they are today, and are passionate in what they do. Today's speaker is Marcia Reynolds. Dr. Marcia Reynolds is the president of Co-Visioning LLC and has always been fascinated by the brain, especially what triggers feelings of connection, commitment, and possibility. Through speaking, training, coaching, she helps leaders and coaches hold powerful and effective conversations that change people's minds, hearts, and behaviors. She's recognized by global gurus as the number five coach in the world and has trained and coached leaders in 41 countries. She's presented at the Harvard Kennedy School and Cornell University, as well as several prestigious universities in Europe and Asia. She is the author of several books, including her latest, Breakthrough Coaching and Wonder Woman, on how high achieving women find contentment and direction. I've been a big fan of Marcia ever since I got into the coaching space. And I'm so excited for today's conversation because I know, knowing Marcia, that it's going to be packed with insights. So without any further delay, let's dive in. Hello, Marcia. Welcome to the show. It's such an honor and a privilege to host you in the Miraculous Being Show. Thank you for being
Oh,
here.
thank you. Oh, thank you for asking.
Thank you. So, Marcia, before we get started, would you share your self transformation journey, maybe highlighting certain pivotal moments in your journey that shifted things for you to where you are today?
Well, actually, the launch for me came when I was, just turning 20. And I was in a very dark place in my life. And I and was told that I would never amount to anything, and I was believing it, and way going down a dark hole. And it was a woman one day, she got on my face and said, "You have no idea who you are." She says, "You are so strong and smart, and you care about people, and you have gifts and privilege that you have a responsibility to use that." So it wasn't just like, you're good, go do it, but the fact that I have a responsibility to use what I've been given as I walk on this planet. That she saved my life. She gave me a second chance and starting a sense of who I was. I mean, it didn't come instantly, but that she gave me that, and I kept saying, "This is who I am," and to claim that. And when I work with women, especially, it's like you have to claim you're smart, you're strong, you're funny, you're determined, you're generous, you're caring, those things, not what you do, but who you are. So I went out wanting to do that, but I didn't know how. So, I got degrees, and uh, I ended up in a training department, actually, for a hospital, before I went into tech companies. And, I recognized that I could help people communicate with each other, to honor each other, to that they would work better if they understood. So trying to figure out how to do that, I went and I got a second master's degree in instructional design because I wanted to do good training and work with people. So I went from healthcare and then into high tech in training departments, and always trying to learn, what does it take for us to connect and really hear each other and do our best work together, and how can I design my training to do that. And I people liked my classes, but then they'd go out, and as soon as it felt awkward, they'd go back to old behavior. It was the day of I resigned from my last job that somebody sent me this article on coaching, and I said, well, this sounds interesting. And one of the things that has helped me to be success is I've always said, this sounds interesting, let me try it. I didn't go into the all the excuses why I shouldn't, Even the jobs I took, it's like, I don't know what they do, but I can learn. That I took the risk to say I don't know, but I can learn. Um, because I didn't know anything about technical from healthcare, but I learned. Um, and so I watched a coaching demo, and I went, something's different here. So I signed up for a coaching school right away and started learning like how to be with people, not just the skills. And it inspired me to get my doctorate in trying to understand what happens in the brain different when we coach than when we teach or train. So I can start sharing that information with coaches, which has led to my books. But my first published book, after, I self-published Outsmart Your Brain, but my first published book was based on my doctoral research about the challenges smart, strong women face in the workplace, because I was facing them. And that book, Wonder Woman, um, helped me to realize my dream of being a writer. And then I went on, and Breakthrough Coaching is actually my fifth book, my fourth published book with a publisher. And because I'm a writer as well. I'm a translator. I research and I translate, and my intention is always to help others, not just me help you, to see your powers, to claim them and grow, but to help other people, coaches around the world, to be able to do this um, for the people they work with. Because if, as we said, if we all were to use coaching approaches in our conversation and to honor each other for who we are, wouldn't that transform the world? So that's my journey.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And you definitely transform my world. I can assure you that much. And I'm sure many listeners who are probably listening into this conversation later. But I love that, right? That responsibility towards yourself and how that was a pivotal moment for you.
Mm-hmm.
And also the second one where you said, this is, sounds interesting. Let me try it. A lot of
Yeah.
times we are so afraid to try something new.
Right.
And as high achievers, I feel that that is so much more common, right? In terms of wanting to
Oh,
feel safe
absolutely.
and comfort.
High achievers are sometimes the worst risk takers because they're so used to succeeding
Yeah.
that if there's a possibility I may not be able to do this well, I'm not even going to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Not
You
even sign
know?
up for it.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of times high achievers will leave companies other than to risk failure.
Yeah.
So if I give you something that you're not sure you can do it, you'll get online and start looking for someplace else to work. And so it's really interesting. The people that are used to failing are better at it.
True, true, right?
So yeah, it's really an important thing. I mean, and you know what? The one of the most powerful questions in coaching is to say to someone, so if you were to do this, what's the worst that could happen? How
Mm,
likely will that happen? What else could happen?
love
Because
that.
when we get afraid, we don't sort. We
Mm-hmm.
just look and believe in the worst case scenario,
Yeah.
because the brain says, I need to protect you. And so just having someone outside of us say, so what else could happen? And if that were to happen, that worst case, like if you were to get fired, what would you then do? When I ask that, people say, oh, well, I'd go get another job. Well, okay.
It was that simple.
Oh, right. Yeah, it is that simple.
Right, right. And an interesting thing that you said was that when someone outside of yourself points
Yeah.
that out to you, right? And I
Yeah.
think I've been in that space myself personally, and I talk to a lot of high achievers in that same space who say that,
Mm.
I can help myself. I don't need any help because there is a high level of self-sufficiency
Yeah.
from previous successes. And there's always a
Yeah.
belief that I don't need somebody else to support me in that journey. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts to that?
Yeah. Well, it comes back to that. If I say I need help, then something's wrong with me. I'm not the perfect person I think I need to present myself as. So it's not just they've had successes before, but they're afraid of how people will judge them if they ask for help.
Yeah.
And yet, more the trend for the last 20 years, and even it's accelerating now, of decisions being made in teams, and together, is that we do need each other to come to the best solution. You will only have so much, but when we're together,
Mm.
so uh, I was coaching this gentleman who wanted to be promoted to be a leader. And his boss said, but other people need to see you as a leader. And he was on this team. It was, of all the leaders in the organization. And he was the expert in his field, his knowledge in our state, and had to do with moving water in a desert, which is important. Um, but he would go into these meetings where everyone was supposed to share ideas and build on their ideas and come up with new solutions. And he'd always interrupt and tell them what they should think. And what happened would they would just shut down, And so I asked him, I said, these people need to see you as a leader. How do you think they see you now? He says, well, I know everything. I said, but is knowing everything make you a leader or just an expert? He says, well, I'm an expert. I said, well, are you willing in these moments where people are supposed to share ideas and build on them? Are you willing to give up being the expert in order to be the leader who inspires people to think a different way? And he was like, oh. And it was amazing. Once he stepped into that role, like everybody then got engaged and came up with new ideas, and they found some innovation that he didn't even have. So it's really important to know that the collective, the collective is important. And those of us like you, like me, that come from countries where the culture is, I must do it myself to be independent. I'm a smart person. Don't question me. The idea that I could go into a meeting and say, I don't know, what do you think? It's scary. But how powerful is that to look at you and say, I really don't know. What do you think? What have you been thinking? I'd like to hear your thoughts. Because then you're inspired, just like, oh, she wants to know what I think. And that's so powerful. So there has to be a shift into, I don't know, what do you think? Instead of, I know it all. The CEO of Microsoft once said, don't be a know it all, be a learn it all. Can we shift to that? Yeah.
So powerful. Yeah, I think I did read somewhere that I don't know is such a powerful word, and
Yeah,
uh,
I know. It shouldn't
just
be
those few words.
scary. But I
Yeah,
have so many leaders say, but if I don't know everything, will people judge me as weak?
yeah,
You know? And I'm like, well, okay, what led to that belief?
mm,
And it's more of a fear that of how I will be judged. Well, so how do you know if you said to someone, I'm not sure, what do you think?
mm,
That they would judge you as weak? Have you ever had anyone say that to you? And they're like, oh yeah, of course,
mm,
So, right, it's just the fear of being judged as for not knowing that
mm,
stops us from connecting.
yeah.
Mhm.
I feel like again saying that, let me learn here as well, right? Let's try it out and learn. And asking that question could also be just
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we learn
Wow.
together through conversation. There's a lot of research that shows that people learn more through dialogue than trying to think things through on their own.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Really powerful. And one of these things that you were sharing in the example of the client you were mentioning was this question of who are they being in a particular situation, right? And a lot
Right.
of that work, a lot of your work, I know, revolves around, discovering that identity of who we are being in different contexts. And in Being Miraculous also, we talk a lot about
Yeah.
self-awareness and really recognizing,
Yeah.
our strengths and our weaknesses in
Yeah.
different situations, in different contexts. So just
Right.
curious, how do you see that self-awareness impacts women
Yeah.
leaders, high achievers, and how
Oh,
can they cultivate that in today's
yeah.
fast-paced world?
Well, even in the past 3, 4 years, I've recognized more and more and more that, when coaching is identity based, who am I in this situation? And who would I be in the ideal situation? That's more powerful than what are you doing? What's the impact you're making? Like I had a client, I do a women's leadership workshop with Chinese women every December. It's hundreds of women come to my workshop. It's on Zoom now, hopefully back live in the future.
Right.
But so I coach a lot of female leaders in China. And there was this one woman who was working for a German based company, and all the leaders in the room were American and German men,
mm,
except for her.
mm,
And she was new to the group, you know, but she represented the Chinese market. And she says, well, I'm just so afraid to share my ideas, to speak up. I said, so who are you being in that moment that you're afraid to share your ideas? And she said, well, I'm just a, a Chinese girl. Why would they listen to me? I said,
mm,
I want you to hear that. You're just a Chinese girl. So why do you think they asked you to be at this table? Well, I know more about the Chinese market than anyone. Oh, they asked you because of your expertise, your
mm,
experience. So the Chinese girl has all these experience and expertise. Who else could you be?
mm,
Oh, well, I can be the expert. See, here's where the expert would be good. I'm not the new person in the room who doesn't know anything, and why would they listen to me? But I'm the person who has an area of knowledge that they don't have, you know? And I said, well, so do you think they want you to share that? And she said, well, yes, absolutely, because they don't have it. I said, okay. So in the scenario, what does it look like of you being someone who's a contributor to the
mm,
conversation?
yeah,
And she said, oh, and she described herself as a contributor,
mm,
you know, and the next meeting, she says, it was so great. I started by saying, you know, I have a perspective on this I'd like to share. So she asked permission even, but loudly, so she was heard. And
mm,
they're like, please,
mm,
you know, and she said it was so amazing when they said, please share, that they'd been wanting me to share all along.
mm,
So how are you defining yourself today that's keeping you from achieving what you want? Then you define the scenario. What does it look like that you want to create, to have? And who are you being in that picture? That's the most powerful coaching I have found. Instead of looking at what are you doing, but
mm,
who are you being? And
mm,
even as a coach, when I go into the conversation, am I being a coach? You know, and how many coaches say, but do I add value by just coaching, summarizing and asking questions? You know, and I'm like, well, um, that's interesting that you're afraid that if you don't have answers, that
mm,
you won't be valuable. But you're dealing with smart people. Can you
mm,
help them think? That's the value. And when
yeah,
they have that breakthrough moment, it's like, oh, wow, yeah, I didn't see it that way.
yeah,
Isn't that the greatest value you can give?
mm,
You know, so who am I being in this moment defines how I act,
mm,
you know, and it will be sustainable in the process. So I think identity based coaching is the most powerful coaching we can do.
right, right. And something very interesting that you shared, right, about wanting to provide value. I think that's not just something related to coaches. I see that with a lot of women leaders I work with as well, and
Mhm.
a lot of people in this community who feel like they need to go above and beyond
Yeah,
to demonstrate that value, right? Whether they are as a mother, as a
yeah,
wife,
right.
as a team member or a leader,
Hmm.
there's the constant pressure that they feel. And maybe I'm generalizing a bit, but I usually see this more in women than in men, wherein the
Yeah,
need to provide value is there. And what would you
yeah,
say to women who are probably still experiencing some level of that, that they need to stretch themselves thin to provide that value?
right. Well, I always say, so, you know, what has happened in your past and what have you observed that led you to this belief?
Mm,
You know, because usually it's nothing and it's just a fear, you know, that I'm not good enough.
mm,
You know, I have to keep doing more. I'm not good enough. You know, so I might even say, so what's enough right now in this situation? What are the expectations of you, the real expectations
mm,
um, that you have? Are they expecting you to know everything right away? Or do they realize that you're growing into this? And if you said something wrong, what would happen? You know, so it's true that you know, it's actually women and minorities,
Mm.
that aren't that maybe they may see us as not knowing it, enough or being enough. But uh, the idea that I have to do more, here's the crazy thing. In my first tech job, I did that. And I was in doing technical videos. And I
Mm.
would stay till 1, 2 in the morning to get this done and get it done early. And then the next morning I would come back to work and I'd look at it and it was awful because I didn't have full use of my brain. So when we're always having to do more and more and more, we're exhausting our brain and we're not doing our best work. You know, um, there's a book called Sacred Rest,
Mm.
where it's by a doctor, and she said there's 7 types of rest
Yeah.
that if we don't um, allow ourselves to do this, we're not reviving our brain to do our best work. So if you're wanting to do your best work, it's not overwork, it's
Mm.
taking care of yourself so you have the quality of the work you do in the time you give it. And then go take care of yourself, so your brain is working at its highest level, not depleted.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, right? So it's not really about overworking, but about really doing our
Yeah.
best work and doing what it takes to take care of ourselves to do our
To
best work.
do our best work, right? I love that distinction. It's not about overworking, it's about doing our best work.
Yeah,
And what does it take for us to do our best work is you have to have your brain working at its best, which
yeah,
means you have to rest, you have to laugh, you have to love,
yeah,
bring the good emotions into your brain, which makes your brain work more
yeah,
efficiently. Um,
absolutely.
when you're working too hard, then it's draining and it doesn't work well.
Yeah, yeah. And I think there's some level, right? I think when we get into this corporate world and, we have these identities that are bigger than ourselves and these roles and designations, we start to take things so seriously. I remember when I had my colleagues come to my wedding, they said, we didn't know you could smile.
Oh,
And
isn't
I
that
was,
sad?
and it was a moment of aha for me. I was like, do I not smile at my
Yeah.
workspace? But that's so common that we do tend to take
Yeah.
ourselves so seriously.
Yeah, yeah. Let me share one other little story. Once I was in my last company, we were really changing the whole culture. I was in charge of the cultural change. They were changing all the technical product processes and all of that. It was semiconductor. And I was the only woman in the room too, and I was very passionate about what we needed to do to support people to communicate better and to honor each other to make this change, and I was like just rattling it all off. This is what we need to do and this is so important. And uh afterwards one of the VPs came to me and said, I think I want to support you, but I have no idea what you were talking about. And so then I went and I talked to my boss about it, and he said, oh, well, that's so interesting. Do you think that instead of trying to um, force people to do things the way you think they should be done, can you inspire them to see
Mm.
what you see? And I realized that I was talking about how things need to be done, not the vision of what's possible. And come on this journey with me together. Let's talk about it, you know? And
Mm.
so that whole idea that I had to know the answers and force people to see things, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
It just didn't work. And so I had to like bring them together and quit thinking that I, as the woman, had to force them into doing things. No, I didn't have to do
yeah.
that.
Such a powerful shift,
Yeah.
right? Being the inspirer.
Yeah, right. There's the identity. Could I
Yes.
be the storyteller, the inspirer? Absolutely, I could. I did it with the people who worked for me,
Yeah.
but not for the people above me. So,
Yeah.
yeah, interesting.
Exactly. It is. It is. And I think in the first book that you have, I've just started reading it, Wonder Woman, where you
That's
talk about,
right.
yes, you talk about how women suffer from the burden of
Yeah.
greatness. I found that
Yeah,
very curious in terms of the phrasing. And you said that, we are more susceptible to discontentment. And, your journey, the entire book is about the journey towards contentment. So I'm curious if there
right.
are women leaders listening in and are still suffering from that burden of greatness. How can
Yeah.
they find their way to contentment?
Well, actually, what I found this was based on my doctoral research. So I interviewed 100 women or surveyed and then interviewed 10. And I found that, it wasn't that they were lacking happiness, they were lacking contentment. When enough is enough, it's never enough. They would complete a project and then be on to the next. There must be something else I could do because
Mm,
there was a shift and it was globally just at different times. It used to be we'd tell girls, um, oh, you can only be a teacher or a nurse. you know,
yeah.
then all of a sudden, the 60s started to change this in the 1960s, where when mothers started to tell their daughters, oh, you could do anything. In many
Mm,
countries, I mean, there's still countries that they're repressed, but you can do anything, go out and be great. So I got the message, I have to be great. I have to
mm.
be great. I don't know what,
But I have to be
and
great.
so I finish a project and I'm like, well, I finished it. So there must be something else I could do. There
Mm,
must be something else. I'm not, I haven't explored my full potential,
mm,
and so I was on to the next without even acknowledging what I had accomplished, so there was never this, oh, look what I've done. Take a breath and to acknowledge the great things that I'm doing now, and yet I found just the recognition of that what I wanted the women to feel was contentment in my discontent.
yeah.
To recognize I have a hard time with feeling it's good enough, but to
Mm,
stop and recognize what I've done and know that I have a hard time, give
mm,
myself that moment, and then say, so what else can I do? Not what do I need to do? you know and so it's a really an evolution of acceptance that um uh, there will never be to the end of the journey of it's enough. That's the
mm.
whole thing. We'll always feel like there's something more until we get old and tired of feeling that way.
Yeah.
I'm nearing that stage where it's like, oh, I'm done writing books.
I'm sure there's so much more.
Yeah, but to acknowledge ourselves, for who we are and what we have done, just take that moment. Allow our brains to know that,
Yeah.
you know, before we move on to the next. Just a moment. And I think women need to support each other that way. So, I belong to a women's group who are all making transitions from corporate to uh, our own businesses. And every time we met, we'd start with, what has really been great that has happened that you've achieved, to acknowledge each other for that, and then to ask each other one thing for help, to have the courage to ask for help. And that support, that community of support that we provided for each other was so fabulous. So women need to do this more. Find it. It may be in your company or it could be outside of your company. I had a woman I was coaching that said, I need to know some other leaders in this city, not in my company, because
Mm,
she was a bank president and there was no, not that many women in her company.
mm,
And so I asked my hairdresser and she goes, oh my, I know other women that have reached a level that they would love to have other women outside of the company to talk
yeah.
to. And these women ended up being the best of friends and traveling together and supporting each other. So we need to find our own community of support, and not one where we're sitting around complaining, but supporting each other. Yeah.
Mm. That's so powerful, recognizing how far we've come and, in a way,
Yeah.
finding content in that discontentment, right? I think
Right.
that
I
because
mean,
the
even
benchmark is
now,
so high.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even now when people say, like the book before this, Coach the Person has in 7 languages, has sold tens of thousands around the world, and it's like, I'm like, but this next one, only has 8 reviews on Amazon. I
Um,
cannot give myself the credit for the last one,
yeah,
but I can stop and say it to you and laugh at myself. That's the best I
yeah,
can
yeah,
do.
absolutely. Absolutely. I
Hmm.
think one of the conversations I was having with a coach a couple of weeks ago, and she said, "What would you like to acknowledge for your journey?" And I said, "Nothing. Like, there's just nothing I've achieved." And
Look at
obviously, we
you.
went through the entire session discovering what I've achieved. But that's the thing, right? If we don't actually
Mhm.
pause and recognize,
Yeah.
I think it was in one of your podcasts where I heard where you said that when we sleep and wake up, we lose 80% of
Now,
what
what you, learned during
of
the day, your
yeah.
brain throws it out. Yeah.
And it's actually
But
true.
at the end of the day, before you go to sleep, you need to stop and say, what did I do well today? Where did I grow today? So your brain supports you in your growth. If you only focus at the end of the day saying, I should have done this or this didn't do well, then the brain's going to protect you and it's
Mm,
not going to allow you to take the risk again, where you might feel badly. So
yeah,
you've got to stop at the end of the day for your, evidence of success. Give your brain evidence of success and sleep on that.
love
And
that.
that
Yeah.
will then your brain will say, so I guess it's okay you take this risk. You
Mm,
know, you didn't, you're still alive.
yes.
You're here, and you're succeeding. So
Yeah,
end your day that way. Yeah.
lovely. So go to
Hmm.
bed with evidences of success.
Yes.
Powerful. And Marcia, before we go into the rapid fire, I just have one last question for you. And I think this is something I often see in a lot of my community members and in me as well, that if we have like a certain strength in us, right? So maybe it is our ability to drive ourselves, be self-motivated, keep going on and on and on. We
Hmm.
somewhere forget that turn off button as well, right? So
Hmm.
if self-drive or motivation is our strength, we keep
Hmm.
going on and on. And, even if we have nothing to do, we are restless. And we
Yeah.
don't want to let go of that strength because the strength has brought us so far. But at the same
Mm.
time, the same strength is becoming a source of burnout and
Right.
exhaustion.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
would you say to folks who are probably experiencing that?
You know, that whole thing of, well, first off, one of the things the women have, it's not just the burden of greatness, but it's the burden of perfection. You
Mm,
know, I must be perfect. And like, I've said many times to coaches, in a conversation, many of us think we have to know everything. And, my saying is they really just want you to be present. They don't need you to be perfect. You can say something wrong and they'll say, oh, no, I don't see it that way. And then you just change. So, the ability just to be present and open to you and not knowing all the answers is so much better. So, how can I develop my presence? With leaders, it's the emotional tone you bring into the conversation more than the knowledge you have that makes the difference. So I think that, we talked about, rest and revitalizing ourselves so we can do our best work, but to say, how can I work on my presence, not just my skills and knowledge, but my presence? What's that going to take for me to show up as, I care about you. I'm curious. I, I believe in you. Every time I ask leaders, so think of someone in your life that made a difference for you. What did they do differently that
mm,
made this difference? And it's most often not what they said, but they believed in me. Even if they said, oh, you're so, you know what, you're just not doing they said it meanly. They believed that I could do more, the belief in you. So even starting this, the woman who said to me, you have no idea who you are, she believed in me. We need people to believe in us, so my belief in you is far more powerful than the advice I can give you. So really look at how can I be more, develop my leadership presence,
mm,
that I am here for you. I want to know what you want in your life. In my last job, I had corporate training, and then they assigned the factory trainers to me too, and I don't even know what they did in there. And my boss said, it's just 3 trainers. It's no brainer. I'm like, when is leading anyone a no brainer? So each one came into my office and I said, what do you want for your career? How can I help you? And they were so taken aback by that. And the first one was like kind of embarrassed. She said, I want to be a leader someday. I said, great. So, what do you need? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, go out in the factory and ask the people who've been promoted to supervisor what they did. Come back with the list and we'll make a plan. The second woman said, oh, I want to change the computer system. I hate what we have. And they've got classes for the new computer system. I said, great. Bring your schedule and the class schedule. We'll figure it out. And the third woman, I asked her, so, what do you want for yourself? How can I help? And she looked down at the floor and looked up at the sky, and a tear came down her face. She says, I've worked here 13 years and nobody has ever asked me that. She was my most consistent, reliable employee, but very quiet, but did her work, and she wasn't being seen. She just wanted to be seen. She didn't want to be a supervisor. She didn't want to learn a computer system. She just wanted to be seen and acknowledged. So don't think you know what people want. Ask them and let them know, I am here for you. That's the most important thing a leader can do. Much more important than knowing everything.
Powerful. Thank you so much. And I know that we can keep going on and on, but in the interest of time, I'd love to go into our rapid fire round.
Okay.
Are you ready for it?
I'm ready.
Lovely. All right. So, morning person or night owl?
Definitely morning. It's only 7 o'clock now, and this is my second podcast of the day.
Yeah, definitely morning. One word to describe the pandemic for you.
Oh, the pandemic. I would say transformation, life-changing. At first, I was angry and hated it, and then had to move into this is the reality. How are you going to deal with it? So it was a huge transition of how work gets done and how can I like it.
Right. I can imagine. Quite a shift.
Yeah.
Lovely. Are there any non-negotiables that you have in your daily routine?
Absolutely. I think I said to you, oh no, the person this morning, he was supposed to be after the podcast and he asked if we could go early. And I said, absolutely, because it allows me to go exercise. I exercise every day, even if it's just walking and yoga or climbing the high mountain outside my window. I do something every day. That is a non-negotiable. And the older I get, the more important that is. So, my exercise routine is I think the most critical piece. I could do better with my food, and I eat pretty cleanly though too. So I think my physical health is really critical, and I shut down in the evening. And one thing I learned, my first degree was in mass communications and broadcasting. And I had a TV guy say, it's good to end your day with stupid TV. He says, because you need to give your brain a chance to process what went on. So if you're watching stupid TV or something that makes you laugh, do that before you go to bed, not something that scared you or you had to think about. And I'm like, there's value in stupid TV. So I end my day with stupid TV.
Love that. So physical movement and stupid TV.
And stupid TV.
It's lovely. And I always ask this to my guests, what does being your best version look like?
You know, that whole sense of being caring and what's difficult for me, being very kind. When I get really busy, it's like, get out of my way, to be patient, to be caring, to be kind. Again, it's the energy I bring, and the connection. And again, often, with us high achievers, we're not thinking about that. We're thinking about, again, get out of my way. I have work to do. And,
What
how
next?
can you
What
think that
next?
way? And, It's crazy, and it's crazy how much I still do that. You know, and the pandemic really shifted me into that. Because I was angry the first year because it
Mm,
took away all my traveling, my connection, and I had to really work on. You know, I even wrote a blog post for Psychology Today that said, "I miss me. I
mm,
missed myself, you know, that connection and caring about people that I get live. It was very difficult for me not seeing people and doing that. So, really, you know, bringing my best self is how I can be with you as best I can, as
mm,
often as I can in a day."
yeah, yeah. So powerful. Full
Mhm.
presence. Yeah,
Mm,
that's it. And if
yeah.
you were to look back and think of one thing you wish your younger self knew, what would that be?
Um, you know, that uh, I think two things. The one, you know, I don't acknowledge myself enough. You know, you need to do that. Um, but the who I am is so much more important than what I do. To
Mm,
really embody that, you know, even though I wrote about that more than 20 years ago in Wonder Woman, to fully embody that I am a strong, smart,